You are listening to the National Gang Center podcast, Voices from the Field. In each episode, we hear from experts and go in depth about their stories and experience with addressing gangs and communities. This program is supported by the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. The points of view and opinions expressed within do not necessarily represent those of the U.S. Department of Justice.
I'm Sean Baldwin with the National Gang Center. Thank you for joining us. In this episode, we're going to take a closer look at how street outreach workers engage gang-involved youth that are exposed to serious gang and gun violence. I'd like to welcome and introduce Victor González. Victor serves as the division manager for the Mayor's Office of Gang Prevention and Intervention in Houston, Texas. He has more than 30 years' experience working with gang-involved youth, and he is certainly an expert in this field. Victor, thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So for our listeners, at the end of the show, I'll point you to some resources for learning more about street outreach. But just to get us started here, Victor, for those that don't know, can you tell us what is street outreach?
Street outreach is the tool or the strategy in which you're getting out in a community to interact with kids that are involved in gangs, whether they're directly involved, highly associating. You're getting out to areas of the community like parks, maybe community stores, neighborhood stores where gang members hang out, apartment complexes. You got to go where they are. And in order for you to be able to find the clientele that you're looking for based on your program design, you need to know what's out there. So understanding your population, understanding your community gives you a good idea of where you need to deploy your staff or where you need to, as a street outreach worker, you need to venture into. So you can find the right folks to be able to pull into your program, see which ones are available, gives you an opportunity to put out your services, let people know what you do and how you do it and why you do it. And it's something that can take a little while to get used to if you've never done it before. There's a lot of things you have to consider, like safety is one big one, but it's the ability to get out. You've got to be able to get out into the community, and for you to do that, you need to know where folks are at.
I know that our street outreach workers that are listening in know this, but those that aren't street outreach workers, I want them to understand that this is field work. This isn't, you're not working behind a desk. This is a difference between, although street outreach workers do case management for sure, this is street level services that you're providing, right, Victor?
Right. You're actually engaging in the community. If you are set up as a community agency, I mean, you're walking right out your building, right into the community if you're right smack in the middle of gang violence. And then sometimes, obviously, you've got to get in your car and you've got to get out and you've got to create those ways of being able to reach the population. So whatever it is that you have to do to get out there, you got to get out there and do it.
Victor, what we're trying to do today is steal all your tricks and the things that you've learned over 30 years. But I've got to ask, when I speak with somebody that's been in a field for that long, what led you to get started in the field of street outreach? And I ask this because I talk to a lot of kindergartners, first graders, and I hear them say, I want to be a police officer, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a doctor. I don't hear them say, I want to be a street outreach worker. So what led you to get started in this field?
It kind of happened by accident, Sean. It was when I was in high school as a basketball player, and I was pretty good at it for being a Hispanic. Pretty much you had to be able to, where I played, you had to bring it or you got laughed at. So my goal growing up there was two things. I used to watch police officers, and I said, maybe one day I want to be a cop. It was a uniform. I'm coming from team sports, so uniforms to me were something that I always kind of flocked to because I was always part of a team. Didn't go to college right away. Was one of the 5 best players in the city. Things didn't play out the way I thought they were, and a lot of that was due to me not taking care of my business on and off the court. On the court, I was pretty good. It was off the court where I was having the issues. So when I decided I didn't go to college right away. I went 2 years afterwards. And when I went, I played, but you can take the boy out the hood, but you can't always take the hood out the boy. And some things happened there. And, it was time for me to come home. I come home and right back to old friends, and they're wanting to do old things the old way. And I'm like, I'm not about that anymore. I don't want to do it. I took a job with, I used to work Parks and Rec before I left. So I got a little taste of that with the city before I left to college, with that 2 year, kind of 2.5, 2 year span that I didn't go anywhere. And then when I came back, I worked with Covenant House, some pretty rough kids, bunch of homeless kids. So I stayed there, and then I went into a community agency, a nonprofit where I grew up, and it was doing some after school programming with kids from my neighborhood. And then I was there about 6 or 7 years, and then I started to notice the gang situation in our community. It was starting to come up. We're talking, early 90s. By the time we hit mid 90s, I jumped over to a nonprofit on the other side of the tracks in another neighborhood next neighbor where I grew up. And it was there, the Association for the Advancement of Mexican Americans. I met a lady, Miss Flores, Miss Asenet Flores, and she had a grant, and she was doing a substance abuse component. It was substance abuse prevention intervention with young people. But because of what was going on in her community, she noticed all the gang stuff going on, and she was like, I want to outreach. I want to get out to these guys that and girls that are in gangs. We've had a lot of shootings. So for me, it was kind of like, well, I'm not scared of the streets, so I'm not scared to get out there. I come from that. I know what it is. It didn't bother me. I wasn't scared of it or intimidated. So I was like, tell me what you want me to do and how you want me to do it, and we'll get it done. And so once she explained it, I was able to just kind of make my own way. I really didn't have um, anything to follow. It was kind of just, you get out there, you have your gut, you have your own instincts. If you know the streets, you know the do's and don'ts. Respect is a big one. People have to trust you. You have to clearly communicate. So for me, it was one of those things where I just had to find my way. And coming from a neighboring neighborhood, it wasn't that hard for me. I was, I had known a lot of people, and there was a lot of folks that were connected to the streets. So for me, it wasn't really hard to find. I was having to learn the signs, the symbols, all the new stuff that really wasn't part of my generation. The bandanas. I mean, I used to carry bandanas. I used to carry them all the time, but the color wasn't a factor. It was just representing my people. Is how I looked at it.
Yeah, so you were doing street outreach before it was even called street outreach,
Uh,
for sure.
it kind of, yeah, in a way. I mean, I'm not one to sit behind the desk. I mean, my role has changed now as an administrator, and I still get the itch to get out, so I have to figure out a way to still get out there with staff. But it's one of those things that you really have to have a passion for, and as you get into the field, you have to really control that, because you can try to really get out there and do some good stuff, especially when you're young. You want to help. And when you see the things that are going on and you see you can connect, it's kind of like, it doesn't matter. I was using a pager in those days. My pager would go off 2, 3 in the morning, and folks are paging me. I got a situation, I got a problem. And I was in my 20s, I was in my 30s, I didn't care. It's whatever, right? Help them. But as you get older, if you're not balancing that personal life, that work life, and your passion, you can certainly burn out. And that's a big part of street outreach, is that if you're not able to balance, then we lose a lot of good people to the field, because it's just tough for them to be able to maintain the level of work that you have to do when it comes to working with gang members. It's a lot of work.
Victor, I know that staying in this line of work takes a lot of passion and love for what you do. I hear your passion when you talk. I have been in a car with you, coming from the airport while you've been on the phone actively working to stop some violence that was happening in the community. So your passion is just incredible. I want to talk to you about, how do you know that this works? Is there a success story? Is there somebody that you've worked with over the years that helps motivate you to keep doing what you're doing?
There's a lot of, I mean, I've been doing it so long. I still keep in contact with they're adults now. They're in their 40s. And some of them are in their early 40s, late 30s. And when we first met, we saw some good things. We saw some reduction in their activity. We saw them work. We saw them get involved in sports. I saw them be more close with their family, spend more time with their family than they did with the gang. Did they leave the gang right away? No, it didn't happen. Did a couple of them get in trouble? Yeah, they did. They got in trouble. One of them specifically got in an accident. I had been looking for him. I heard he got released. was trying to connect with him right when he got out of our state youth facilities, and I put the word out, and he never called back. And it wasn't too long after that I had heard on the street that he had gotten in an accident and he flipped the car and killed his girlfriend, and he ended up paralyzed in the process. And he reached out. Part of my outreach efforts, some of the things that I used to do, one of them was I used to give every person 3 cards. Give one of our business cards, give one to your mom, tell your mom to hold on to it, put one in your stash, and if they had a girlfriend, give it to your girl. Let your girl have it, or give it to the closest sibling that you're tight with, sister, brother, another family member, so that in case something happens, you have a way to reach me. In this situation, this young person, after he went through his tragedy, through his accident, um, he got charged. He was charged. He did a little time. He was paralyzed. I went to see him, and I looked at him, and I was, he was like, "What's up, sir?" I said, "What's good?" I said, "Man, I'm glad you're in that chair." And he kind of looked at me like, "What you mean when you glad I'm in that chair?" I said, "I'm glad you're not in a box." I said, "We got work to do. You ready?" He says, "Man, I'm ready, Vic." So from that point on, up until he was incarcerated, he was helping me, our office, speak to kids. He did that all the way to the day before he was to be taken into custody. Did his time, came back, got enrolled in school. We had brought him on part time. And actually, he is going to be, if everything goes the way I'd like for it to go, and it looks really good right now, he will be working for me here in the next couple of months. And he's been with the city. He was with us part time. We got him on with the city with disabilities, and he was a caseworker there, helping other folks that were in the same situation he was in. And he's been there for 5 or 6 years now, so he's done a really good job. He's turned his life around. He's done a lot of good stuff. So off and on for a long time, I've had a relationship with this kid since he was 13. Some of his homeboys that I knew, some of them died. A couple of them got involved with a cartel back in Mexico and they were killed. So you never know who you're going to run across. You never know what type of impact you're going to make. But with this one, him and I just go way, way back, and to see him where he's at now is certainly something that you don't always get to see. That you get to see the small successes, graduated, got a GED, got a job, and they moved on. Those are big time successes, in my opinion, when you can get somebody who's been out on the street, banging every day, and then you get them into doing something different. You may not keep a relationship with them like I've done with this one.
That's an incredible story, Victor. Somebody that you've worked with is now working with you to help others. That's incredible. So, Victor, I know that you don't like to brag about the work that you do, but I'm going to ask you a question. I'm serious about this. In 30 years, how many lives do you think you've saved? And when I say lives, I'm talking about these kids' lives that literally may have fallen victim to gunfire or gone off to prison and spent the rest of their life in prison. Give me an idea how many lives you've saved with the work that you've done.
Man, I would say hundreds at least, but you can't measure some of the other things that myself and our staff have done over the years with something that maybe people don't always think of how much you actually did for somebody else. I'll give you examples when we work with schools and we're hearing of activity that should be taking place on or off campus before, during, or after school. You could have a major shooting. I mean, we've had shootings, we've had stabbings on campus, off campus, shootings, drive-bys. And when we've gotten involved, had we not gotten involved the way we did, had we not had coordinated efforts with different agencies, man, we could have lost a lot of kids, a lot of parents picking up their kids from school, a lot of school personnel that's just out there working on regular after school duty. I mean, you can't measure what you've been able to do when you can intervene in an incident, and you prevent something large scale from happening. Go to a funeral and you're talking to the homies and they're mourning the death of one of their friends, and their immediate deal is to go out and retaliate. And those retaliations could go on and on and on. And through street outreach, if you're able to be credible and you're able to get out there, you're able to slow some things down that, gang members and gangs will say, you know what, charge it to the gang. They're going to get theirs, let police do their thing. If you can get out there and intervene in that, that's always a plus. I can't measure how many times we've done those things and how many people we've helped, not get caught in the crossfire, because those are things that I think people don't always think about when you're doing this work. You're just worried about the person in front of you or the person that came through your door. But there's a lot of folks that I think we've impacted, and I think that would put us in the thousands. But I mean, it's hard to measure that. I just know from doing the work that, it does make an impact and it does help when you have this type of team in place.
And this is challenging work. It's so hard to measure what you've prevented for sure. And I've seen so many prevention and intervention programs fail, not because of the effort, but because it's just so difficult to effectively engage gang involved youth. So I want to spend some time talking to you about the challenges that your street outreach workers face when they're dealing with these gang involved youth. So if you could, you obviously want your street outreach workers to make contact with these kids and help lead them through to a better life. What challenges are they facing in doing that out in the field working with these kids?
Well, one, safety is huge. I mean, we could talk about safety in a whole nother session. But safety, you're working with young people, young adults, folks that have dedicated their life to the gang lifestyle. So it's not something that you're going to be able to just automatically get them to think differently. There's not a lot of trust. There isn't hope. Sometimes some of these guys and girls, I'm not going to live past 20, 25, 18. I want to get it when I can get it, Vic. I want to I want to feel what it's like to have money in my pocket. I want to feel what it's like to have my own car and have nice clothes and not always feel like a second class. I want to be somebody. And sometimes they go to the efforts that they do to get some of that stuff, and that's a mindset that's created over time. So we're battling that as street outreach workers. But I think what does help is preparation, preparing your folks. Sometimes having people from the community, if you're an outreach worker, it always helps to have somebody that's been there, close to that, something similar, where you can recognize what's going on so that those folks that have those trust issues that you're trying to tap into can really recognize, okay, this person gets it. So maybe let me listen, because you're not going to pull all of them in. I mean, we're not that naive about it, but there are times where those more challenging folks, when they think gang members are just cold-hearted killers, and there may be some out there, but there's a lot out there that really care about their community. That's why they say they protect the hood, right? But you may have a different purpose with that person. You may be able to just need to have a contact just so you can have a conversation down the road. So, really putting yourself out there and showing how real you can be as an outreach worker and that you know what you're doing is going to help battle through some of those challenges that you may have initially. Especially if you're in a new program. If nobody knows about you, you've got to put yourself out there. You've got to put your information out there. People know what your program is, and put a face and a name to it. We could talk on the phone all day long, but if I ain't never seen your face and I don't know who you are, how can I really trust what you're saying is legit? And how can I trust that you are who you say you are? So you got to put yourself out there.
Yeah, so I know your street outreach, your by program design, you are getting referrals for certain youth, gang involved youth that meet certain conditions. And once a street outreach worker is assigned to a client, um, tell me what that first contact between that street outreach worker and the gang involved youth, what does that look like? How do you or how should a street outreach worker approach that client? And maybe what's the goal of that first contact?
The goal of the first contact is to try to make an impact, to try to get them to see what you're talking about, to get them to connect. So depending on where the referral is coming from is going to sometimes dictate a little bit of how they're feeling. If it's a school referral, I may have a kid that's, okay, I'm gang involved, but I'm not really out there yet. He's still in school, right? Most of my gangsters, they usually drop out. And those that do stay in school, they're pretty quiet, stay out the way, and they don't make any noise, and they do what they need to do. And then if they're a referral from probation, if they're a referral from juvenile parole, sometimes they're going to feel forced to have to talk to somebody. So that initial contact is really crucial in how you approach them. Always have to have respect. Try not to be too formal. Don't be looking at your watch like you got this person on a time crunch. Like one of those sessions where we got 40 minutes. When 40 minutes is over, we're done. You can't have that. Uh, how are you gonna make the visit? Where are you gonna conduct the visit? Is behind closed doors? Is it inside their house? Is it on the porch? Is it in the driveway? I mean, it depends, because every kid at the end of the day, they don't trust you if they feel they're being forced to, because of criminal justice sanctions, a court order or probation ordered me to do this from the court. Then you have to go in there understanding that. So coming in with your services, coming in and understanding how you can explain to them, how you can help them, some of the things that you do from alternative activities. It's just not just talking. We go on alternative activities. We're able to advocate for you. We're able to work with your probation officer, be that buffer, be that middle ground person, be the person that can bridge the gap between you and the school if you're having school issues. Being able to articulate what you can do for them in the very beginning is what you want to do, so that they can make up their own mind how much they're going to engage with you. And that's going to take a little bit. So no need to push, no need to be investigative, no need to force anything. Introduce it, be as informal as you can, um, with some structure. Obviously, you don't want to just sit there and talk for 2 hours and get nothing done. Have it planned out how you want it to get done, because you want the kid to engage. At the end of the day, that's the overall goal. I want you in the program. That's my goal, but it may not happen in the very beginning.
I can imagine that some of these youth, if not a majority of the youth, are resistant to getting involved in the beginning. What is your experience? What does it take to cross that bridge and actually get one of these gang involved youth to actually start responding to the work that you're doing with them? Is that, I can't imagine that happens overnight. So what should a street outreach worker expect to have to put into it before they're starting to see the response that they'd like to see?
So if you said you were going to do a school visit, you said you were going to do a home visit, you said you were going to interact with their parents, you said you were going to invite them to activity, follow through. Keep following through no matter what. You got to show up. Even if they don't go to school and you catch them later and probation says, Vic, I still need you to tap into them. All right, we'll tap into them. And you go to the home and you say, hey, man, what's up? You ain't at school. What's going down? Man, you went to my school? Yeah, I went to your school, man. I was going to check on you. I told you I was going to check on you, man. Make sure you're solid. What happened? How come you didn't go? You've got to be able to follow through. You've got to be able to be consistent, not only with the message and what's coming out your mouth, but you have to be able to show up physically. They need to know that you care. They need to know that you understand their situation. You respect their family. Don't go in there disrespecting nobody's family. You can't judge folks for things that have happened in the past. It's sometimes it's tough when you're doing this work. It's like, if only this mom, or only if that dad, or only if this family would have done this. That's gone. You got to work with what you got to work with. And I think when the family and the kids understand that, it makes things a little easier to engage with when it comes to a person who is an outsider. You're an outsider. You're not part of the family. You don't live in the community. If you do, it's a plus. But if you don't, you're coming into something that's brand new to you. And so they need to know that you can understand, that you can sort that out, and that you can respect the fact that, yeah, we got problems. They got them, but we're here to work through them. And the only way you can do that is to be consistent. Phone calls, texting. How you doing? What's up? You good? Everything okay at school? How's everything with your PO? You've got to follow through. Hey, we're going to an Astros game. You down? You want to go? Just throw it. They may or may not. For a long time, they may say no, and then eventually they show up and they're like, "Man, I heard my homie went with y'all, so I want to go." All right, well then let's go. We'll pick you up. Just get with your mom, get your permission slip signed. We all good. That's why I told you need to get the program. Oh, what I got to do, man? Like I told you the first time, we got to get your paperwork done. Man, I'm down. Let's do it. So it just takes a little consistency and a little follow through. You got to be there all the time.
So I hear what you're saying about building the trust and building the relationship. Do you think that some of the clients you're working with are just waiting for you to let them down? They're looking for you to let them down, or maybe even testing you a little bit to see if you are going to let them down.
Oh, they test you. They'll text you. They'll text you. When they're testing you, they'll text you. They'll call and see if you pick up the phone. If you scheduled the visit and you didn't cancel it, if you didn't call them, you just didn't show up, man, every time you do that, you're not doing yourself any favors. These kids are like, here we go again, man. Same old person, same old line. They're not gonna do nothing. Don't tell them you're gonna get them a job if you're not gonna get them a job. Don't tell them you're gonna get tattoos removed if you're not gonna get tattoos removed. This takes me back to your preparation. What are your resources? What are your partnerships? What does your infrastructure look like as a program design? What is it that you're going to do? And if you've been saying you're going to do it, then you need to do it, because if you're not going to do it, you can't lie to the kids. The kids are double checking you. The other day, a kid asked me. The other day, I was doing. I ran into. I was one at one of our schools checking on one of our kids, and everybody had just come back from starting the school year from for the new school year, and immediately we had some new kids check in, and the dynamics were changing. A couple of kids were about to go at it. Some old kids that we've had there were already picking on a kid that they don't like because he's from a rival gang. So I pulled him in, and I started talking to him. One I know really well, and he's like, "Vic, we got you. We understand." I said, "You know my staff, but you don't know me. I know you heard of me." He goes, "I already heard of you." I said, "Who'd you hear from?" And then the other one kind of grinned at me. I said, "Your OGs." He goes, "Yeah, my OGs told me about you." And I said, "What'd they say?" They said, "You were solid." And I said, "Because I don't bother nobody." I said, "I come at you with respect. I come with you. I'm coming at you with a concern that I have on this campus, and to remind you how much work you've done here. You've done great work. You're almost done. You got one more part of your GED. Don't let this fool come in here, dictating what's going to happen with the rest of your time here at this school. You've done great. You've been here. Your homeboys before you, they tore it up. That's what brought me in here." And I started talking about who they were and what it was. And he was like, he goes, "See, that's what everybody said. They said, you going to know what's up." And I said, because that's part of what we do as street outreach workers or gang intervention specialists. How can I help you if I don't know what's going down? I got to know a little bit to be able to even fathom what I'm going to do with you next to make something go away so that you can be successful. I said, so the credibility, after a while, when you build credibility, it really, really helps. But he went back and double checked everything I did. They double check other clients. The parents talk to parents. I mean, that's just the way it's going to go down. They're always going to double check to see if you're about what you say you are.
I heard you mention earlier that you're taking these youth to the Nationals gang, to major league sports gangs. Is that one of the tools that you're using to help motivate them or reward them for participating in the program? And what other things are you doing to motivate these kids?
A lot of the kids don't get to experience that. Take them fishing, go crabbing. We go bowling, skating, things that you think gangsters don't want to do. They're not going to tell you they want to do that stuff. It isn't until you break them down a little bit and they start sharing with you, "Man, I never done this. I bought a pizza for a guy the other night, and he tattooed everywhere." He goes, "Man, it's the first time anybody done anything nice for me." He goes, "Man, I appreciate that, sir." And he was with his girlfriend, right? Sometimes, food is a big deal for us. Everything we do food. Pizzas, hot dogs, nachos, hamburgers. Man, we go through some spicy chickens at McDonald's and fries, biscuits and cheese, $1.50 menu, $2 menu. We go chips, Takis, hot Cheetos, candy, gum. I mean, we go through so many different things that you would think are so silly, that some of these kids don't even get to eat. So when we're providing food, we've had kids that, after we're done with an activity, they're like, "Hey, sir, can I take the food to the house? I see there's a lot." And he's stuffing 8 hamburgers in his pants. I'm like, "Oh, fool, you could have that. Go ahead. I know it's for your brother and sister." So, and then you bring the relationship and we're all together. We're a family. My staff's like family. We're all family. We try to create that little atmosphere that when we go somewhere, we represent, we carry ourselves with respect. So you got to earn the right to do those things. We can't just take kids and stuff all the time just from the jump, because, we work with rivals and sometimes we can't mix. It's just too hot on the street. So that's just dangerous.
You've talked, Victor, quite a bit about what you do that works. What doesn't work? What have you learned over the years just doesn't work?
I think I've watched where we get to travel a little bit with you guys with the gang center, and I watch how sometimes the structure of a program was never really defined. I don't think the goals were ever set realistically. And so from the very beginning, you've got a 2-3 year grant, and you're not going to get a lot of stuff done in 2 or 3 years if you're not set right. When programs are there for a while, they're allowed to be able to build credibility. and that helps. When you don't have credibility and you don't have longevity, that hurts your program. When you don't partner with other agencies, you got to partner with other agencies, because you can't do it all. It'd be nice if you had a big drop-in center and you could do GED program and anger management, and I've got a substance abuse component, and if you had all that set up, boy, you know, that'd be nice. But realistically, they may not happen, right? So you got to be able to be realistic about what type of infrastructure and program design you want to create. If you're going to be a program, policies and procedures are huge, because I've watched folks step outside of the rules, and you want to carry guns and you want to be drinking while you're working, or you're off the job and you're in the community and somebody sees you drunk, but you've been telling the kids all week, don't drink and drugs are bad and gangs are bad. But then there you are at the club, cutting up just as bad as some of their big homies are, but who are you to tell me? So your role modeling sometimes doesn't help you when you're out there. Your follow through doesn't help. The way you carry yourself, you have to remember, you have to work with schools. You got to work with this population. You're going to run into a lot of different services that overlap, that have touched these families and these kids somehow, some way, right? So if you're not able to carry yourself professionally, you can still keep your credibility on the street. But for you to advocate for these kids, you have to maintain a level of professionalism, and you have to understand how other folks work outside your agency. You're not the do all save all. If that's going to be your mentality, you're going to struggle. You have to be able to have collaborations with people, and they need to understand what you're doing. So as well as you're having to articulate to the clientele and to the families that you're working with, you also have to articulate that to professionals and resources in the community that you need to be able to provide those resources for these young people. If you don't have that stuff, you're not going to make it. I'm telling you. You can do what you think you can do. I mean, we can go faith-based. There's some faith-based programs do really good stuff, with spirituality and all that. Great, I'm with that. If that works for you, go ahead. But at some point, these folks need jobs. They need a trade, and to be able to live way after, they're done with us, because they're not my program. I mean, we're running 18 months to 2 years. So it's not something that, we're just wanting to be a crutch for you. We're wanting to give you things that hopefully you'll be able to do so you can move on. If you can have that, you can be successful. If you don't, you're going to have a hard time.
So, Victor, last question here. There are street outreach programs that are growing all over this country. There are thousands and probably thousands of brand new street outreach workers that don't have the benefit of your experience and your expertise. I want to give you just a moment. If you could speak to all of them, what's your best advice for being successful in street outreach?
If you're one that's been in the field a long time, pass on what you've learned to the new folks coming up. Don't be stingy with your information. We're not doing ourselves any good in our profession from being stingy with what we've learned. Your time's going to come where you're done. You're going to retire. You're going to burn out. You're going to have other things that you may want to do. Your kids are going to grow up. You have other aspirations. Don't be stingy. Give it back to the youngsters. Youngsters coming through, and you're brand new. You know, you come in with a lot of energy. You come in with a lot of. I want to help. I want to do all these things, and you want to work 15, 16, 20 hours, and you got the energy to do it. But let's be smart when you come in. Take advice from a veteran. Take advice from some folks that have been around a little while to help you understand what street outreach worker you want to be. Because I've got some that get out there and they get with it, and they push and they push and they push, and then they don't manage themselves very well, and then they don't last. Then I get those that are scared to get out there, and they can't find that good balance. Always find a good balance of your home life, because you got to take care of your family. If your family ain't right, I'm going to guarantee you ain't going to be right. If you out there drinking and partying and still living a life that's fast, and you think you can still do this work, you're not going to last. It's going to catch up to you. So balance your personal and your work life. Never stop learning. Don't think you know it all. Even us old folks, we got a lot to learn. We've been around a long time, and some of us, There's some things we can learn. We just don't want to learn it. We can learn just as well. So street outreach workers across the board, young and old, you can learn. We can always be better together. And I'm glad, Sean, to hear that there's a whole lot, because for years we've always talked about the gang center. Myself and I and my cohort over there, Jay Franklin, when we talk about this work, we want it to be something that's professional, not something that's looked at as, just some fly by night approach. These people ain't real. They're not legit. They're not worthy of giving them any type of attention, when I think they're very crucial to anything that you're trying to do to impact gang violence. So, stick with it. Let's not burn ourselves and put ourselves in a hole. We're already in one. Let's keep pulling ourselves out of it, and let's keep championing. We got to champion this work. We got to have people sticking around long enough to be able to let the youngsters come in, learn, take it, and run with it. And let's keep building that after for the new folks that are coming in. But we got to do it together. We can't do it by ourselves.
All right, Victor, thank you for taking some time with us to share your expertise and your wisdom, share your experience. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you guys for doing this. Good luck to everybody out there.
If you'd like to hear more from Victor and learn more about street outreach, please visit the National Gang Center's YouTube channel to access the webinar recording, Addressing Gangs, Effective Street Outreach. Thank you for joining us, and stay safe.
The National Gang Center is committed to informing, equipping, and training communities to prevent gang violence, reduce gang involvement, and suppress gang-related crime. For additional information regarding the National Gang Center, visit nationalgangcenter.ojp.gov, follow us on Twitter, subscribe to our YouTube channel, or send us an email at information@nationalgangcenter.gov.